Intensive functional rehabilitation is a therapy offered to patients with a brain injury, for example, after a stroke. In Belgium, there are about 20,000 patients per year who suffer from a stroke. These are typically patients who will receive intensive functional rehabilitation.
Axinesis is a medical company certified according to ISO 13485. Within Axinesis, we develop, we manufacture, and we commercialize products dedicated to intensive functional therapy. In concrete terms, what are we doing at Axinesis? Well, we re-educate the brain to regain control of the upper limbs, meaning the arms. How are we doing this? We have thoroughly studied the theories of motor relearning in case of an adult, or of motor learning in case of a child. At Axinesis, our mission is very clear. We want to help as many patients as possible, whatever their stage of recovery. This is why we want to ensure what we call a continuum of care, by providing a therapeutic continuum. So, we will be able to help and support patients from the moment they are admitted to hospital, from the clinic to the patient's home. Axinesis, as a company, was born in 2015, but the project started long before that. It began at the start of my PhD in engineering sciences in 2006.
Our collaboration with Axinesis goes about 15 years back. At the time, the UCL team, led by Professor Dehay and Julia Sapin, who was then a doctoral student, called us to find out what our rehabilitation needs were. And so we helped them design the robot, based on the needs of the users. Little by little, we tested the robot to see how useful it was, and once we had a device available, we started clinical studies to see if it worked, and if it was suitable for our patients. So the devices have been present in our clinic for about 10 years now. They are used in clinical research on the one hand, and in clinical routine on the other. This allows our teams to give feedback to the development and research teams in order to constantly improve the technology.
The Rhea Plan is in fact a robotic device that can offer movement assistance, even to people who can no longer move their upper limb. In other words, this robot is able to detect the patient's motoric intention and assist him or her if necessary.
I have been working with the Rhea Plan for 7 years now. First, as part of a study, I did my doctoral thesis for 4 years with the robot, and now I've been using it almost daily in the clinic for 3 years. So we conducted a study with the Rhea Plan robot on a population of subjects who had suffered a stroke. A group of patients received conventional therapy and additional sessions with the Rhea Plan robot. This group of patients had increased motor control and increased gross manual dexterity in the upper limbs, with a prolonged effect up to 6 months after the robot sessions.
The second product we brought to the market is the Rhea Touch. The Rhea Touch is actually a follow-up product to the Rhea Plan. The Rhea Touch is a large touchscreen tablet with which we interact not with our fingers, but rather with everyday objects. The idea here is to mix the real with the virtual. With this product, we offer a so-called functional intensive therapy. This means that when patients use the product, they make at least 1,000 movements during a rehabilitation session. It has been proven that this intensity is beneficial to the recovery of the patient's motor skills.
What is specific to the Rhea Touch is the virtual aspect, which is very motivating. Children and adults are motivated by the game presented to them, and at the same time, there is the reality of tangible objects integrated into the game. So we really manipulate objects, and the objects interact with the screen. This is totally innovative, especially as these objects can be fully adapted to the patient's situation. The advantage that Rhea Touch brings to the patient is that it allows him to do a large number of repetitions in this playful context, while being less aware that he is doing a certain number of repetitions. We've also developed a system that allows us to integrate the functional objectives of the patients into the context of the game, which stimulates the patient to achieve his functional objectives.
Our newest product is the Rhea Touch Lite. As the name suggests, it is a compact and light version of the Rhea Touch. The idea is to take this well-known intensive functional therapy to a decentralized level. That is, the idea is to leave the clinic, the hospital, and eventually go to the patient's home.
One of the interests of these devices is the possibility for the patient to self-educate. And recently, we finalized a systematic review with meta-analysis, which showed that self-education in these patients was as effective as traditional therapy. This means that these therapies, assisted by new technologies, are not going to replace traditional therapies, but they are going to be very complementary, and so they are additional tools for the rehabilitation teams. So self-rehabilitation is an excellent way to complement and intensify and prolong rehabilitation in the long term.
Tele-rehabilitation will be a very important element in the development of Axinesis. So with our portfolio of Rhea Plan, Rhea Touch and Rhea Touch Lite, we cover the whole patient pathway through rehabilitation.
Our technologies allow us to implement these so-called intensive functional therapies, but intensive means repeating a large number of movements per session. And these therapies must therefore be very playful. That is why, at Axinesis, we also develop what we call serious games. We develop our own therapeutic video games in order to get the patient hooked onto his therapy. These therapeutic video games, or so-called serious games, are developed here in Wavre for patients with brain injuries.
One of the advantages of robot-assisted therapy is that we have implemented games on the robot, and I think this playful aspect is really a plus in therapy. It allows us to vary the classical sessions, and it adds a playful and motivating aspect, and therefore increases the adherence of the patients to the treatment.
As far as the future vision for Axinesis is concerned, we obviously want to continue our innovation towards intensive functional rehabilitation, towards rehabilitation centers and their professionals. But another innovation route and another future orientation for our company is also towards individuals. We really want to work on tele-rehabilitation, this decentralized rehabilitation where we go to the patient's home. So if you are interested in any of our products, the Rhea Plan, the Rhea Touch, the Rhea Touch Lite, we are of course always prepared to show you our devices. Normally we do this with demonstrations. So we come to you with our product to show you how it works and let you try our products with some of your patients.